Hello, welcome all of you to conversation today. But today I'm going to converse with Dr. Shilpa Das on design, accommodation, and disability. She, uh, as a professor of design, she is the best person to talk about this remarkable discipline and its connect with disability. Thanks for coming here on board, Shilpa. Can you kindly introduce yourself and then we can go ahead?
Yeah, so I'm Shilpa Das. Hello, everyone. I basically am an alumna of JNU and Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Bombay, where I did my PhD in social science. Uh, for the last 18 years, I've been working with the National Institute of Design, or NID as it is called, which is in Ahmedabad. And here I look after the PhD program and also uh, what is called the Science and Liberal Arts program, which is basically your humanities, social science modules. And I teach within these two. I also look after international programs here.
Thank you, Shilpa. Thank you. Thank you. So maybe we can, ask, begin with a very basic question. Uh, what is design education? And maybe you can also walk the listeners through the idea, what is your connect with it? What is design education and what is your connect with it? That kind of. Can we start there?
Yeah, sure. So basically, what happened, Professor Hemachandran, is that in 1953, after independence, the Indian Parliament passed what is called the Industrial Policy Resolution, which was conceived by Nehru, and it emphasized the need to accelerate industrialization and nurture the growth of both public and cooperative sectors to increase opportunities for improving living standards and working conditions for Indians and also for employment. So, this policy envisaged a process of training and development of technical professionals and managers who would give impetus to nation building with the expansion of the public sector and the development of village and small industries. So, to meet the needs of modern India, they felt the need to establish an institute of industrial design in the country. And they hoped that this institute would help foster an indigenous design movement in the modern sense of the word by initiating design education and training in the country and ultimately providing the foundation for a new profession. So, in 57, the government requested the Ford Foundation to invite the American duo Charles and Ray Eames to visit India. And they did. And the next year, they submitted what is called the India Report, which defined the underlying spirit that would lead to the founding of NID and the beginning of design education in India. So basically, what they did was they recommended a problem solving design consciousness that linked learning with actual experience and suggested that the designer could serve as a bridge between tradition and modernity. So, based on the recommendations, the government, with the help of the Ford Foundation, set up NID in 1961 at Ahmedabad. And Gautam and Gira Sarabhai, who were siblings of the illustrious scientist Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, they played a major role in its establishment. And basically, the institute at the time revived the philosophy of the Bauhaus movement in Germany, which was learning by doing, which informed its unique curriculum and pedagogies. Anyway, to cut a long story short, today NID is deemed an institute of national importance. It offers professional education programs at both bachelor's and master's level. There are 5 faculty streams and 20 diverse design domains which offer these. So we work in education, applied research, service, and advanced training, basically. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, Thank you, Shilpa. The I mean, what are the main ingredients of if you like, design education, maybe you can also walk the listeners through major paradigms or thought shifts in design thinking. Well, what does one get educated in if one were to take design education?
So basically, the overall structure of our program is a combination of theory, skills, design projects, and field experience, and which is supported by working essentially in design studios, skill and innovation labs, not just classrooms. And basically, we offer education and applied research service and training in 5 faculty streams. So, which is industrial design, communication design, textile apparel and lifestyle design, IT integrated and experiential design, and what is called interdisciplinary design studies. So, under this, of course, there are 21 specializations. But when you speak about the key shifts, like paradigms in design thinking, see, primarily, and very simply speaking, over the decades, there has been a shift from perceiving design as mere problem solving to focusing on other things like service design, human centered design, systems level thinking and design, and experiential design modes. So its design was always aimed at, in the service of the country and in the service of society. But there has been a very conscious kind of social turn, making a change in more socially focused contexts as opposed to entirely commercial kind of domains or realms. Okay, and a range of activities and interventions today inform design that make for a more socially driven form of design, which suggests that researchers and practitioners from non design disciplines should work in close collaboration with designers in order to realize this change in contexts, different contexts, social or cultural, economic or environmental, if you please. So there has been a move from top down modes of designer as expert to more egalitarian and participatory modes of design, where the designer is a co creator with other stakeholders in the design process.
So what is so problematic about problem solving thinking, Shilpa? What is problematic about it? What are the deficits about problem solving approach to design?
Uh, you see, when the designer is meant to be a fixer, a troubleshooter of problems, then willy-nilly it can become hierarchically a very top-down kind of approach where the designer comes in literally as you please, like a knight in shining armor with solutions to the problems that stakeholders or that the client or whosoever may face. And it's a little less democratic, if I may put it that way, because you seem to be saying that, okay, I'm here now and I shall solve your problems. Whereas, when the modes and approaches and the perceptions have shifted, so that the designer today will say, well, look, we are all on this path together. He'll say this to he or she will say this to the other stakeholders, and we are all co-creators. So whatever it is that we are looking at, we are all going to work together, coming up with whatever it is that we need to do in order to arrive at our desired goals. So uh, it's more equalizing, not just in its approach, but also in the methodologies that you sort of deploy.
So, in a sense, user driven, and it's not about the user's problems, but about the user's experience. of a design, say a keyboard or a house or a gadget and so on. Is that a right way to understand it?
Yeah, also that would be part of it, yes.
Okay. Well, can you say more? I mean, what is not, what did I not understand in this scheme of things, Shilpa?
Um, See, I'll be able to better explain this, when I can actually talk about, say, disability and design. Yeah. So, for example, if you were to look at a sort of, the link between, say, let's just say aids and appliances, and I'm later going to be talking about it, I presume, in some detail. A typical way to look at it earlier would have been to say that, all right, for disability, what we have to offer are aids and appliances, as though merely giving aids and appliances and prosthetics and orthotics or whatever is going to fix um, the issues that, say, disabled people may face. There is no you also need to pay attention to the lifestyle aspirations that a community may have. You also need to keep your ears to the ground to listen to what is coming from the community itself in terms of how they perceive what you have to offer. So, is it enough to just offer, uh, design the next best wheelchair or crutch, if I may put it that way? Where is aesthetics in the scheme of things? Um, uh, and basically, I think these also tend to declare or put problem solving on a pedestal in such a way that is rather oppressive of disabled people. Because, as I said, it's as if they have nothing to do with their lifestyle aspirations, with aesthetics, or even with trends in what may be fashionable or current, contemporary. I mean, why should these not look stylish or elegant? You know, why should, if I am a person with polio and if I have to use calipers, why should it be a heavy, cumbersome, ugly caliper, which also functionally sort of restricts me from full movement of the limb, but which at the same time looks ugly to me, sending out signals that I would not like to send out, you know. And here is where I see a problem. It's a huge and highly insensitive kind of oversight in mainstream design, Professor Himchandra. This failure to consider the aspirations of disabled people or their market potential as consumers and as meriting attention. That's very, very important in my opinion.
Certainly, certainly. Actually, it's interesting that you talk about it. I'm remembering my adventures with Braille watch some time ago. Braille watches tend to be very large, very rugged looking, as though it was meant to, serve, hey, all you need is touch and feel the time.
Correct.
But, it's much more than that. I mean, people want to wear watches because it looks good on them, or they want to wear watches which look good on them.
Correct.
And such choices were never available those days. But
Right.
thanks to fashion thinking, Braille watch design is catching up.
Right.
Uh, yes, certainly it rings a bell to me too.
I have seen a huge change, if I may add to what you just said, because in the early 90s, when I saw Braille watches, they looked rather different, very conspicuously. uh, you know,
Blindy, if you like.
unattractive. Yes, yes. And today there is a range. There are options available out there, which, of course, price would be a factor, though. But you do have a choice, right? So this choice becomes very, very important and critical.
What about medical fixing, Shilpa? I mean, because when it came to design for people with a disability, one of the major mediator is medicine, because
Yeah.
lot of design stuff about
Hmm.
calipers, wheelchair, other prosthetics, limb, artificial limb, mobility cane, hearing aids, uh,
Right.
all these paraphernalia, gadgetry, and devices, uh, they are designed and deployed and given under the close supervision of medicine. So, and medicine by and large is about giving remedy, solving problems.
Correct.
But is medicine also evolving thanks to design shifts? Is that a good question to begin with?
Yeah, sure. And before I answer this, uh, pointedly, I'd like to also here quickly first mention, those of us who uh, work within the area of disability studies, we tend to start with these models of disability, right? So, so we know that we have these individualistic models like the charity morality model, which is in a sense no different from, say, the medical model that purports to do good to the to disabled individuals, but which also, like the morality model, looks at them as having defective minds and bodies, disability as suffering, as being a burden on society, as a stigma, right? And this view has permeated all our language and media representations and cultural beliefs. So the medical model, it has, uh, while it supplanted, in a sense, the traditional model, or it went hand in hand with it, it looks at disability as a pathological condition. So, and then when it designs with this sort of perspective, there will be a problem. So, and who are the people who construct and sustain this medical, paradigmatic approach? There are people that we need, or we are told we need, or who are part of this paradigm, like doctors, rehabilitators, policymakers, psychologists, sociologists, biological scientists, and people like that, who actually give you your disability certificate, and therefore, they're the most authoritative sort of uh, definers of disability, the official definers of disability by law. Now, but uh, before I answer your question about aids and appliances and things like that, then there is also the social model sort of way of looking at it, or the social oppression way of looking at disability, where we say, and which is important in order to talk about design for disability, where we say that, as you know, that disability has nothing to do with the body, but it is a social construct, and that it results from dominant social, political, and economic ideologies in different societal barriers and disabling environments, which include things like an inaccessible, barrier ridden built environment, to public transportation that may not be accessible or usable, to the absence of a universal design code, to segregated education, work arrangements that are not flexible, or accommodating of the requirements of people with disabilities. And besides these structural things, also the social model speaks out about the invisible, insalient aspects of society and culture, like communication barriers and prejudice and discrimination, institutional discrimination, and society's unrealistic expectations about bodily norms and lack of appropriate information. And the social model tells us that because these sort of conditions exist, they exclude disabled people from the mainstream in every way possible, leading to fundamental inequities, which
Correct,
is
correct, correct. Just
socially,
keep them in isolation.
correct. Socially, vocationally, economically, and educationally, you isolate them. And this is often what is called a situation of handicap, right? There's also something which is a model which is important for designers, which was given by Erlandson in 2008.
Can you spell his name?
uh, Erlandson. And he gave us what is called the systems model, where he is saying that stakeholders, whether they are individuals or communities, must take up responsibility over those elements over which they can exercise some control. For example, whatever resources are available to you in your environment, like schools, transportation, you take advantage of them. But at the same time, culture, society, and governments need to, take the onus. They need to ensure that individuals get these resources and opportunities in the first place, so that they can maximize their functional capabilities within the given environment, and that culture, society, and governments need to remove those barriers and provide alternatives for personal action and personal choices. So what happens is that these models, whether it is the medical model that you mentioned, the social model, or the systems model, they all take action in very different ways. Now, because the medical model looks at disability as a pathological problem, it looks for ways and means to restore the person's functional ability through assistive aids and appliances, prosthetics and orthotics, corrective surgery. Yeah. The social model, which lays the blame at the door of society and the environment surrounding disabled people, it urges us to use products, facilities, and services that are based on accessible design principles to reduce or remove accessibility barriers. And the systems model that I just mentioned, it advocates using universal design as a way to increase accessibility for everyone. Now, of course, and the universal design model, this is less stigmatizing than other approaches, but we can talk about it later. So, to come to your point about aids and appliances, this is what one can call. I think we had a conversation earlier where you mentioned design against disability. So, this is what I think would come under that rubric. And I'd say that the entire medical rehabilitation paradigm is problematic, even though it has good intentions to remove or alleviate the physical experience of disability. What is problematic is the way it looks at what it calls the normal body and the way it deems the disabled body as abnormal. And seen in that light, assistive design or all your aids and appliances are oppressive of disabled people, and they can be perceived as design against disability. So all your artificial limbs and braces or digital sound synthesizers for those with visual impairments, or reading machines that transform speech to text, and so on and so forth, these are all products that are used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of individuals with disabilities. But what happens is that design practice, which results from design education, as I said earlier, does not look at lifestyle aspirations. It clubs it under a category called design for special need. And these products are not affordable in a country like ours, with other factors sort of complicating the scenario. Uh, Turnover and profitability are low. Investment in design is also poor. And so we have very poor quality aids and appliances, as we discussed earlier.
And because of low expectations,
Correct.
the design of products also are meant to cater to those lowered expectations.
Yeah. And sometimes designers also say that, array cost is, this will, if I do this design innovation, it will jack up the price. So that is sometimes offered as a reason. And then, but the main problem to me is all about the clinical aspects of disability on which it focuses,
Yes.
rather than people's bodily pluralities or cultural, corporeal sort of realities
And also aesthetics.
and aesthetics. So, whatever your age, gender, other differences, they will just look at people in the community through the same lens. And the same prostheses or wheelchairs or whatever communication devices are offered to people with a particular impairment. Like one size fits all. So, but the other thing is that culturally speaking, I mean, you need to consider other aspects, such as how do people relate to the use of these processes. So, studies have indicated that, for example, parents in India are apprehensive when their disabled children use tricycles on the roads because our traffic is so bad and the roads are not really, friendly that way.
That's right. Huh.
Or mothers women in India do not like to use prosthetic hands because they are heavy, and because if they are mothers and they have to hold their child, they wouldn't want that hard prosthetic to sort of hold the child. So again, young girls are seen not to use like wheelchairs too much because they find the way they are designed in India, they find them difficult to use.
Correct.
So if you design in a keeping considering that the design the disabled community is homogeneous, then you will actually end up designing for nobody, if you design for everybody, as one likes to say. And so you need to consult disabled people in the design process. Yeah. You need to know how they perceive these products vis-a-vis their body image and self concept. You need to, as you said, consider aesthetics, the visual appeal. They should not send out signals of poor quality in color, form, style, because then people will abandon them. They'll be embarrassed to use them. They will not want to catch unwanted attention. And also because many a times people with disabilities have said that, look, they become stigmatizing. They mark my disability, and I lose respect for myself. And I sometimes feel embarrassment. I feel ashamed. And this is oppressive of disabled people. So this is the whole sort of complex, tissue.
Well, so in that case, what are the diverse ways of looking at design when it comes to disability? For example, people talk about notions such as inclusive design, universal design,
Yeah.
adaptive design. What are they, Shilpa?
I mean, if we have to look at them as separate categories, basically you see adaptable design and go by the textbook, then adaptable design just means making modifications.
I see.
Suppose you are a recent entrant to disability,
Uh,
okay, and you now have to use a wheelchair.
yes.
What sort of modifications will you make around yourself? For example, in the car that you drive, so that you can take your wheelchair inside, or in your kitchen by lowering the height of the platform,
Correct. Hmm.
So they are not usually mandated by law.
Hmm.
That's adaptable design.
Hmm. Hmm.
Accessible design is another sort of terminology that is used. Here, the barriers are removed, access is allowed, but the design is geared towards a specific group, that is, people with disabilities. Now, if I can give you examples from, say, Apple and Microsoft, They both have accessibility features today. All our
Yes,
iPhones,
yes,
all our
yes.
computers have accessibility features in their operating systems. So, what designers from these two organizations did was they worked with representatives from the disabled community to understand their requirements and their problems that they faced in the interface, to create designs that truly address their real needs. So, this first hand experience actually led to, this personal experience led to deeper insights, if I may put it that way. And it in a way, if we look at the models we spoke about earlier, then from a social theory perspective, accessibility basically enables a shifting to the social model of disability and away from the individualized approaches, which consider the individual as a locus for disability. But the more important thing about accessible design is that they lend disabled people the opportunity of independent living, of dignity, and right to full participation in education, civic affairs, economic, social, cultural, and other spheres of life, like as equal citizens of a country. Also, when the non disabled world looks and sees people with disabilities going about, going to school, going to college, working, commuting, marrying, running households, having children, having a regular kind of social community life, and carrying out their daily lives in a dignified manner, it enables the stigma of disability to be diminished substantially in a way, because they are seen to have positive social identities. Okay? Inclusive design is a term that is used primarily in Europe and Japan. And universal design is a term that is used in the US. And basically, they just seek to mainstream design and make it accessible to everyone.
Like the Apple that you mentioned about, because the Apple phones, they, uh, for example, the one that I use, uh, you can activate different accessibility features based on your disability or condition.
Correct. But here, in a sense, you are also catering to individual needs. That's the challenge of inclusive design. You match the product or environment to its users. So basically, for example, you know, um, the universal design principles aim at equity, flexibility of use. They say that it should be simple and intuitive to use. So anyone who sees it will not have to spend time figuring out how to use it.
What keystrokes to use and so on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it need low physical effort. So basically, you would see how your design benefits the highest common factor.
Ah. So
Where
probably
here,
tablets are examples of that. Anybody can just connect to it intuitively without
yeah,
understanding the
and
nuance.
for example, you would be designing for the elderly, for the disabled, for children, for pregnant women, a very tall person, a very short person, through the same design, right?
Okay, okay.
And we see today in IT and telecommunications, this is best sort of exemplified, where that's short for Universal Design, is making significant change.
Through software architecture and so on, right?
Exactly. Now you just look at ATMs today, yeah, which meet many accessibility requirements. The early ATMs did not have that speech, sort of the voice. What is that called? Uh, aspect to it. Yeah. So computers and the internet also support independent living today. And now all these computers, as we mentioned, come with pre-installed accessibility software that you mentioned earlier. So it will benefit individuals with both visual disabilities and hearing disabilities, right? screen magnifiers, screen reading software, speech recognition software, text communication software, such as instant messaging. Anyone who has a computer or smartphone
Can do
will be
that.
able to access these,
Hmm.
right? And they are not only for people with these disabilities, but also for elderly populations.
Correct.
So the
Probably something like an elevator is also an
yeah,
example of this universal design.
correct. It benefits a wider audience.
Yeah, wider audience.
Correct. But so you try to devise these kind of products with inbuilt intelligence, or products today with embedded sensors are also newer opportunities for more universally designed products. Somebody said, I was reading in a book and I'm not sure who said it, but one of these design scholars said that smartphones are like the 21st century Swiss Army knife with a range of features, and which is having such a transformative effect on society and culture,
Oh, yeah.
revolutionizing the way we live, work, study, and play. So, designers are now alert to the diversity of users, or ought to be, with their different physical, sensory, motor, and cognitive abilities and skills. So these are some ways. And what happens here is that, in a sense, you, by catering to the needs of different users in one system, you are inclusive, you are socially conscientious in your approach, design process, and outcomes, and to a large extent you are able to make differences in terms of what you might call abilities unnoticeable.
Correct, correct. So,
And
which otherwise would have remained, nullified. I mean, people, I
Uh,
mean,
so
you
even
cannot.
with accessible design,
Hmm.
it would have been seen. But here, it's like you are able to transcend that.
Correct.
So because you are working on generalizing grounds, you are as if disembodying the body.
Hmm.
That it can be any body that is in focus, or an aging body, a short-statured body, a child's body, a pregnant body, and so on, a disabled body. And therefore, it can help raise self-esteem. It can erase disability as difference to a great degree, and the stigmatization would decrease.
Right, right. Okay.
Sounds like a
Then,
scenario,
yeah.
but
Sorry, go ahead, Shilpa.
no. I'm just saying that it sounds idealistic. So it may work to a greater or a lesser extent.
And also, it is also context specific, and they need not be expensive gadgetry. Sometimes, a simple, uh, you know, sensitive approach to a table layout can be universally useful in that context. It doesn't have to be always gadgetry and gizmos that are expensive. Is that right, Shilpa?
So what I was saying is
Huh.
that the solutions need not always be so tech, um,
Right, right. High tech.
high-tech
Hmm.
solutions.
Hmm.
It could be, see, for example, if you have a staircase and a wheelchair ramp next to each other, it's still a way of making the ramp conspicuous. Everybody using the staircase, one person using the ramp. Yeah. But I was in Switzerland 2 years ago, and I think one or two public buildings in India are beginning to look at this. I found that a particular museum had devised a wonderful way to integrate the staircase with the ramp.
Oh, I
I
see.
wish I could describe it. So it was, you know, um, as the ramp went about a sort of circuitous kind of path to the main door,
So did the steps, is it?
so did the steps just cut across those,
Wow.
so that everybody is using the same. And
Hmm.
it was, I can't tell you, it was such a wonderful example, of true integration, inclusion, in the real sense, you know. But again, Professor Hemchandran, I was in the course of my own sort of research, and I have also found that within the same kind of disability, also, people may require different things. For example, take two people with polio,
Correct.
okay, that motor disability. One uses crutches and another uses a wheelchair.
Yes.
Now, for the person using a wheelchair, escalators will be of no use.
Ah.
The person will have to use an elevator. For the person using crutches, also, elevators can be a risky proposition. And I have heard many people say that oh, elevators were quite problematic because I could not, even somebody who does not use a crutch, for example, you know, because I could not, I'm not sure about whether I can maintain my balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
But somebody else may find the elevator more convenient, the escalator more convenient than walking down to where the elevator is. So we know that within the same kind of disability also, different people have different requirements. And so,
And apart from the diversity of usage, adaptability also diversifies. You
right,
know, based on people's you know, disabilities and other orientations.
correct. Yes, of course it does.
Uh, well, that makes me ask you, Dr. Shilpa, this thing about special needs and disability designing. See, I
Yeah,
know what is special needs in a broader sense of education,
right.
but I do realize that design thinking is also linked to um, what people call special needs. Can you say more, Shilpa?
Yeah, you see, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, you know, even say there are so many terms that can be substituted for disability, right? That are in currency.
That is true.
Some are specially able, physically challenged, mentally challenged,
Lot of
uh,
euphemisms.
differently abled. You know, lots of euphemisms which are patronizing, some sound benevolent, and so on and so forth. And I think even that, so same with design for special needs. I have a big issue with the terminology and the nomenclature itself of design for special needs, you know. And since you speak about education, within design education, we often design institutes have this module which is called design for special needs, which actually subsumes not just disability but also other kinds of identities such as the aging identity and so on, designing for children and so on. But it is still so patronizing, benevolent. Some might call it philanthropic. I prefer some other term like designing for diversity or for divergent needs or something like that, so that you are accommodating a broad spectrum of difference. Because when you name something, you know, you it can make all the difference to how the people being named or the community that is included in that naming perceives itself, as we rightly know.
That's right.
Between perpetuating the stigma and the oppression inadvertently, between making for agency, because disabled people end up defining themselves and perceiving themselves through the eyes of the non-disabled world more often than not.
More often, yeah.
Yeah. So everyone has gone through. I mean, everyone in the community knows what I'm talking about, because you go down that path and uh, and then you realize what is happening.
What is happening? Yeah.
And, yeah, so design for special needs is highly contentious seen from that light. There is a problem with the very sort of the naming of it, if I may put it like that.
Well, then, where do we go from there, Shilpa? I mean, what will be your recommendation for a design engineer or a design professor? How, where do we, how do we understand disability from a design thinking perspective? How aware they should be, and where do we go? What are your main recommendations?
Yeah. See, at the outset, in a nation like ours, this matrix of universal design, which it seems to be like a solution, is also becomes problematic and becomes more complex because we have other oppressive realities, like poverty or illiteracy or overpopulation and so on. And then again, we have a range of cultural, linguistic, religious, and ethnic diversities which preclude any kind of proper design intervention. Then sometimes these and the lack of infrastructure also make universal design solutions difficult to implement.
Correct.
You know, so, and similarly, visual communication design solutions also falter many a time because their success depends on visual literacy among the vast target audience. So, for example, many years ago, I was working on an outreach project, for NID with a few other colleagues from NID, and we were to design a strategic, systematic communication campaign against disability prevention and care in 9 rural districts of Gujarat. Okay, and we were doing this for the government of Gujarat and Handicap International. So, what we realized firstly was, we thought that, oh, we'll go out there and we'll design this wonderful campaign, and what an opportunity. But when we went to the field, we realized that even the way people looked at disability differed on the field, as you know. And people did not look at disability as we might. So, for example, somewhere I remember the fact that somebody, and of course, there is a deployment of disability metaphors there, but someone said that, Array, I don't have a job and I'm disabled. Or somebody said that I cannot, they didn't perceive disability the way one would. At the same time, when, for example, one of our deliverables were these posters, okay? So we did a whole lot of deliverables like stickers, wall graffiti, calendars, posters, booklets that uh, people in the PHCs and CHCs could use, at the cluster level and district level. We also made for television public service announcements. For radio, we did a number of 15-minute plays, 5-minute skits. We did interviews. So it was a huge sort of campaign in terms of scale. But when we did those posters and we thought that let's go and test it out on the field, let me give you one example. We had this poster where in the foreground there is a man carrying a child on one of his shoulders,
Okay.
an infant.
Okay.
And in the background, there is a building with a red cross. So obviously, it's a dispensary or a hospital or something.
Okay.
So when we showed it to this bunch of people in this district, we thought they'll know that acha, the child needs treatment and is being taken to a hospital.
Hospital.
So this person did say that, कि, अरे बच्चा बीमार है, अस्पताल लेके जा रहे हैं. But the person did not actually, later we found out, when we were talking to the person, to our utter surprise, it was not the Red Cross that he identified. It was because in their culture, when a child is ill, he or she is carried on one shoulder. When a child dies, he or she is carried on the other shoulder.
Oh, okay.
So, visual literacy, how target audiences understand what it is you wish to communicate, can also be a thing that can throw a spanner, you
Ah,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyway, to come back to your point, there is a dire need for the disability model to shift from these medical, therapeutic, functional models to one of social inclusion.
That's
There is a
right.
need,
Hmm.
and there's also need to study systems at large, surrounding this a holistic kind of approach. And again, service design is something, an area that could be engaged with intensively. How sensitively are these, for example, the one I mentioned earlier, how sensitively are these public health services reaching out? Then the approach itself, if the user or disabled person would be the expert and not the medical practitioner, public health expert, or the designer, then this kind of a conceptual shift would be greatly empowering, no, of disabled people.
Of course, yes.
And interestingly, when you seek design solutions that meet the needs of people with disabilities, it would result in a better overall systems design, which will benefit not just people with disabilities, but also those without, like the elderly or children or people with different kinds of bodies, not necessarily termed as disabilities.
Certainly, certainly.
So I think designers, when they are working on on anything that they are working on, they need not necessarily be catering to a project that is for the disabled.
Hmm.
But they should keep certain ethical kind of questions in mind, that who who are you representing uh, in your project, in your work, who is being left out, why is a certain disability related initiative being undertaken, what responsibilities arise for you as the designer, are the perspectives of disabled people or other people incorporated, or are they filtered out?
Correct.
How are you dealing with conflicts of interest?
Hmm.
And then, are you challenging the forms of oppression that people with disabilities experience? How can you design an alternative paradigm?
Hmm. Oh,
Does
this.
your
Yeah.
work reproduce the status quo of domination, or does it challenge it?
Hmm.
And is it liberating for the disabled person? But most important, I think, and the key is, how are you representing that identity? How are disabled people represented through your work?
Hmm. Or
That,
imagined when you.
or imagined,
Yeah.
that
Hmm.
is the litmus test, no?
Hmm. Litmus test. Yeah. Hmm. Wow. So, so many layers you walked us through. For example, the idea of visual literacy, about, what constitutes movement and action and connectivity among people, they experience lifestyle choices, uh, representation, symbolism, and and real experience with all pushes and pulls of power. These things have to be understood, and design is not just a problem solution approach. I think these are the great lessons I would take with me from a conversation with you, and our listeners too, I believe. Uh, Thank you, Shilpa. I mean, an hour passed by so quickly. Um, do you want to say anything by way of last word before we say goodbye?
No, thank you, Professor Hemchandra, actually, for this opportunity, because a lot more needs to be said and done within the domain of design. But more importantly, and I think as a last word, I would say that, uh, the whole hegemony of the power structures that operate even within designing for disability need to be questioned,
Yes, yes, yes.
above all. And we are able to do that and initiate a discussion and generate a debate pay with people with disabilities driving these discussions. And then I think we would be uh, doing the right thing.
Yeah, truly liberating discourses will open up. Yeah, that is true, Shilpa.
But thank you so much
Thank
for
you so much. Feel so enriched. Thank you.
thank you.
Bye, Shilpa.